my Saab friends. Today we are going to be tearing out the front seat in my 2008 Saab 9.3 Aero. It is the seat that was actually in this project car, the B50 all black interior, swapped into my laser red daily driver. Well, unfortunately, after I swapped it, I drove it around for some time. I realized the driver's seat, the heated portion of it, does not work. So what we're going to be doing today is pulling that seat out and replacing the heated elements. There's two of them. I'll show you here in a second. But real quick, before we do pull out that seat, we're going to bust out the Tech 2. I have things basically set up, and I'll show you how I determine that the heating elements are in fact bad. Tech 2 is in. We have it all set up. Turning the key to the ignition here. So I don't know if it's an issue with my Chinese Tech 2, but every once in a while some of these values or some of this text doesn't appear. But all we need to go is to Diagnostics, enter the vehicle information, which mine is a 2008 9.3. We'll go to the body, and then we're looking for the seats. So the beauty of this, if you're just new to the Tech 2, you don't have security access yet, you can actually do some basic diagnostics in this specific test of the heated seats and the activations without security access. But as soon as you try to make any adjustments, say change the daytime running lamps, anything like that, you definitely need security access for. So right now we'll get a baseline. Passenger seat, 75.7 degrees Fahrenheit, and currently the driver 77.2. What we need to do is activate them. So we'll back out of this, so that gives us the baseline 77 and 72, and now we can go to the activation portion of it. So this is real simple, real basic. You just press on and we'll let it run for a little bit, and then we'll turn this off, the activation, go back into the read values and check to see what the temperature is at. So we've had this going for a minute or so. We'll go ahead and turn it off. We'll hit exit again. Now we'll go to read values. So now you can see where it was around 72 to 75 degrees before we pressed the heated seat element to turn on. Now it's up to 94.3. So that tells us right there that the temperature sensor is in fact working, which is good. And then that the heated seat, at least by the feel of my hand, by putting it on there, it is in fact warm. And I could tell that it's also the back as well as the bottom portion of the heating element that is working. So baseline for the driver, 76.3. We'll go back to activations and we will try the same thing, and we'll see where we're at with the temperature. So the driver's side has been on for roundabout same time frame as the passenger seat. Now we'll go ahead and check the values. The front driver's side, 76.1, going down a little bit. It's basically where it was at. So that tells me right then and there is in fact an issue with at least the heated seat element portion of the seats, or potentially a wire. So by doing this, you are bypassing this module right here, and we are kind of going straight to the source, which is the seat. Now, there could be other underlying issues. There is in fact wires going underneath the seat plugging in. There's a built-in relay. There's a lot of options. This is not a clear cut and dry way of diagnosing this. If you have a better way of diagnosing and kind of isolating some of the problems, by all means, drop a comment down below. I figure this is probably the easiest way to diagnose with a Tech 2. It's not 100% perfect, but based on how common this issue is and ruling out that, I would say more than likely it is these elements. So let's go ahead and pull this seat out. This is likely the easiest part of the entire disassembly, and that includes the removal of these two Torx bolts. If you're not familiar with what a Torx bolt is, it takes a socket style head like this. I mean, I guess you can use other methods, but this is a T50 Torx socket, and we're using this because we want the ratchet because there's actually a decent amount of torque on these. Move the seat as far forward as possible, and we'll undo these two bolts. Set these to the side, don't lose them. The last bolt to get out for this seat is going to need to remove this cover, this little plastic trim piece, and it literally just pulls up, and this sits on the head of the bolts. And it takes a socket like this, and this is an E14. And that pops up. There's one little clip that clips into that hole right there. Now this seat will be wobbly, so I'll show you what I'm going to do. I'm going to get in from behind, tilt it forward, because there's two locking tabs on each end. There's no bolts in the front. It actually just goes into the floorboard, so we need to tilt it forward, get to the connection underneath, and then kind of like go forward and up, and then just finagle it out. So it's kind of a balancing act. It's definitely best with more than one person, and I recommend putting a towel and then maybe like a piece of cardboard down, so then it doesn't tear up the leather on your back seat. Okay, seat tip forward, you get access to this connector, and let's see, probably can't see it, but there's a tab right here. Pop it out, and then the connector releases. So this will actually come with the seat when we remove it. So remove the headrest. If you were able to see it, there's two tabs on each end, and then just lift up and that removes. Okay. Now this is the part where you want to protect the back seat as much as possible. All right, seat is removed. Seat is inside. I laid a cloth down. The bottom is a little abrasive, so definitely want to lay something down to protect it. Excuse the mess. My dogs have a whole bunch of toys and they scatter them across the house, so it's kind of a disaster. But anyways, I have the trim removal tools. I have some side cutters, pliers, screwdrivers, anything that we may possibly need to tear apart this seat, minus the knowledge. So if I'm 100% honest, I've never worked on upholstery before. I've never done anything like this. The seat removal and swap, the whole interior swap, to me that was super simple. But when it comes to upholstery, I don't know what I'm doing. So I did a little searching, and if you've watched anything Saab related on YouTube outside of what I post, probably the number one as far as Saab stuff is Auto Autopsy right here. So this video, and I'll link it in the description, and if I can throw it up here, I will. But this has given me step-by-step instructions on how I'm going to go about tearing that seat apart to get to the said heated elements. And I don't want my video to overshadow his, because his is probably going to be better as far as the how-to. It's just mine will kind of be in conjunction with it on how to swap out the heated seat elements. So big shout out to you, my friend, and we'll go ahead and use that video to tear apart this seat. Starting out, we're going to get a trim removal tool on each end of those two buttons and pop them right off. The back two T25s. There's an additional T25 torque screw on the side that also needs removed. That clip down in there. Get a screwdriver to pop that out. Little tab right there, push that in, pops out. That is for the memory switch. Now for the rest of the controls. Okay, this one's a little tricky, but that tab and that tab need to be pushed out to release. Onto the lumbar. These little guys are rather tricky, so just down in there, stick your screwdriver. We'll rotate it around to make more sense, but what you're trying to do is to get into that notch right there. So have your screwdriver like this, point of reference is the button on the back, but get it into that notch, push it forward, see how that tab moves, and then it slides right up. Zip tie in here that we need to snip. Here's that heated seat connector, and there's a little tab in there, push it in, that releases it. So look at this, one of the things that I didn't even know was an issue. This is hanging out. What is that for? That is for the lumbar. So you see these two like bicycle brake cable looking things? Well, they go on each end. There's one right here. And there should be another one that clips into here. Here's the frayed wire. It clips into there. So then as you adjust the lumbar, this moves either closer or farther away from you. So I had no idea this was bouncing around in here. Well, I'm glad I found it. I have a spare seat that I was planning on using for a computer chair, which really the lumbar portion doesn't really matter to me. So I think what I'll end up doing is once I fix the heated element portions, I'm going to replace, I should be able just to replace the cables, this back piece, as well as this. This is where we're at. Now onto the bottom portion. I'm gonna have to remove some plastic clips. So, not sure the best course of action. I have a trim removal tool. I'll just start pushing down the cushion itself to release some of that tension and get some of these clips undone. Okay, now that I got the one clips wrestled off, now ready for this back portion. Now definitely wait to do this after you get the front ones unclipped. Okay, you might not be able to see it, but just like the other heated element connector, you just push in the tabs. This one has a tab on each end. And here's what we're left with. Looks pretty cool, all stripped down, being able to see all the electronics. But what is the coolest part is that you really do not need any special tools whatsoever. Definitely a set of trim removal tools. I think I got these years ago from Harbor Freight. Pretty cheap, 10 to 15 bucks, flat blade screwdrivers. And that's about it. Just watch your fingers. I'd recommend wearing gloves, because I ended up at one point slipping and punching this thing, which was pretty cool because that is not soft by any means. So that is all stripped out. I'll have to strip out my project computer chair deal that I'm going to be doing to harvest this lumbar piece, because of course that's broke. That needs replaced. But right now, this is what we're working with. Bottom cushion. Flip this one, and there's that element. So let me show you the replacements. Okay, replacements from esaabparts.com. This is the one that's gonna go right there. Part number for the Aero seats. I think this was 42 bucks. And then here's the bottom piece, which is a little more elaborate. Part number right there, and of course I'll put the part numbers in the description. As far as price on this one, I think it was like 46 bucks. Now is the part where we'll need some special tools. You'll need some shears to cut these hog rings, and then obviously whenever we go to reassemble, we need hog ring pliers. So hog ring is basically just a thick staple that is crushed into somewhat of a triangle, circular shape, but just a way to loop it like that and to hook into that foam so it's not going to go anywhere. We have a bunch of hog rings on the inside here. Look at this. Wow. That could have been bad. Safe to say I figured out why the seat doesn't work. This goes to show you, if you ever have a hot spot in your seat, don't use your heated seats. Pull that fuse, because there's a fuse for the left and the right, because look at this. There's literally a hole burned. This seat caught fire. So I would say I removed about 15 hog rings. Now we are ready to remove the actual heated element. I'm going to be as delicate as possible because I really don't want to mess up this foam any more than it already is. And quite frankly, worst case scenario, I'll just set the new one over top of this. But we'll see how far we get. Foam is not perfect. It is kind of like cottage cheese in some areas, and obviously the burn hole. I am honestly just going to leave it as is, because by the time you get the heated pad on here, I think honestly it's going to be all right. And then of course you have the leather over top of it. It's going to be taut. I think we'll be in good shape. But what I did learn is don't pull slow and kind of tug at it. This side turned out way better, and I ended up just pulling consistently, and it turned out much better. Now we're on to the heating pad. Again, is the part number for these sport seats. So I think the key here is to start at one end and work our way down. The middle is going to be a little tricky, mainly because we have the divot and of course these side flaps that are falling in the way. So stuff is very sticky. It's like a fly trap. It's really not overly difficult to do the hog rings. Get it underneath that metal wire and slowly crimp it. And it's hard to see, but it's right in there. Now this whole center is secured. We'll work our way along the sides. All right, so I have 5 hog rings per side, another 3 in the center section. Now we're good to flip it over, put the leather back into place. That, my friends, is the bottom replaced. Now we're on to the upper section. More than likely this one is probably fine, because if the bottom one was blown out, then it would stop the continuity to this top pad, but because we made it this far, I have a new part. We'll go ahead and replace that anyways. Same process as the bottom. Find all the hog rings. Alright, so that is the backrest heating pad removed. There's 4 hog rings on each side, 4 here, 4 here. There's a couple at the top that you don't need to mess with. I'm going to leave those attached. Kind of fold this back a little bit. Stick the new one right over top of it. Again, the part number for the top for these sport seats. Make sure the cable is towards the bottom. Back pad is in. Now this reverse order. Reattach the hog rings, the 4 on each side. Alright, top section officially done. Alright, for this lumbar system, it takes T25 torque screw. Comes out real simple. And then there's this little notch that goes into that hole like such. That pops out. So now there's a couple tabs and may need a screwdriver to pop this casing off. Or, well, you might actually be able to leave it on. So which one's broken? Okay, so this one is the broken one. In case you're wondering, the sport seats, aka the aero seats versus the standard seats, the lumbar cables are entirely different. Ask me how I know. So in my infinite wisdom, I ran to the junkyard and I was able to secure one of these cables. They didn't have an aero with the sport seats, so I picked up the regular version. Well, apparently it's a little bit different. It uses this clip, has this end to it, and it is a couple inches shorter. Yeah, so that's cool. So I did try to install it. Didn't work. Then it dawned on me that this was from a standard seat. What I have is a sports seat, and actually I have a anniversary seat, which I wanted to tear apart anyways because I'm going to send it to the upholstery shop to get that fixed, as well as a split seam on this side right there. So it kind of worked out. So I'll send that stuff off to the upholstery shop. In the meantime, I'll try to source just another cable, but I will harvest the lumbar cable from this to here. You gonna help me or what? You're just gonna supervise, Prudence. Understandable. I definitely don't want to do this myself. I certainly won't make you. So here's a replacement cable. Just reverse order. Both sections are done. Now we are ready for reassembly. Favorite part by far is the lumbar that's fixed that I didn't even know was broke. So now we'll go ahead and time lapse, throw all this back together. So I'm almost positive I forgot to hit the record button for the reassembly process, but it's really not that difficult. Obviously it's reverse order of the disassembly. So now we are ready to take this big, heavy bear of a seat and throw it in the car, and fingers crossed, once we plug it in, everything's gonna work exactly like it should. So now let's go ahead and toss it in the car. Seat is back in and installed. It got rather late last night, so I didn't really film anything because it got really dark and you wouldn't have been able to see anything anyways, but I got the 2 torque screws in the back end, the E-Torx for the seatbelt, as well as the plastic cover. I can obviously turn the key, press the button, you'll see the 2 orange lights light up, and sit here and tell you that it's working, or, because I have a Tech 2, do the exact same thing but activate it with the Tech 2, and see the temperature increase to 100%, prove that we have now officially fixed this driver's seat. So what I'm going to try to do is turn on the Tech 2, turn the car on, and then turn the heated seat on, and hopefully read the adjustment value in real time. Okay, right now the driver's seat, without sitting in it, 77 degrees roundabout, so I'm not sitting in the car. Go ahead, turn on the heated seat and see if it increases. So it's now been around about 1.5 to 2 minutes, and you can see it's getting rather toasty, proving that it is in fact getting warm. All right, man, this seat is nice and toasty, like no kidding. So right now it must have hit the max because it's right around 132 degrees Fahrenheit and it hasn't capped over that. So it's maintaining around that temperature on the highest level, and it is very, very toasty. So I'm more than pleased, and especially with the lumbar that I didn't even know was broke. Obviously I really haven't used it very much if I didn't notice that it was broke, but for some reason, whenever I figure out something is broke, I have to fix it. So I'm definitely glad I fixed it on the cheap, just harvest some parts from another seat that I had laying around. Otherwise, I'm not sure the availability of just that cable. I know by a quick search online, you can buy the whole lumbar support, which is that lever, the 2 cables, as well as that plastic piece in the back, but I imagine that's probably 70 to 80 bucks plus shipping. But if I find it, I'll put the link in the description for that. I do apologize for forgetting to film the reassembly, but quite honestly, it's really not a difficult process because it's literally reverse order of the disassembly. So if this video helped you out, be sure to give it a giant thumbs up and definitely consider subscribing because I do have a lot of content out there, and especially Saab stuff. So with that being said, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, drop a comment down below, and I'll catch you next time. Thanks for watching.